So most people think, CO2 is the most prominent greenhouse gas on Earth, but we need to fix this myth right off the bat. That's the first thing I do is educate people on no, it is water vapor. And if you think it's CO2, that's because you've been led to believe that that is the most significant greenhouse gas there is. This is the most prominent greenhouse gas on Earth. CO2 is in here, and man-made CO2 is a sliver of the pie chart. You don't have to believe me. You can actually quote NASA on this in their document, The Importance of Understanding Clouds. Even small changes in the abundance or location of clouds could change the climate more than the anticipated changes caused by greenhouse gases, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. And that's NASA.
First, a quick word from our sponsor.
At MPB Health, we believe in empowering you with the knowledge you need before making any decisions about your healthcare. We're passionate about making healthcare accessible, flexible, and cost-effective. We've designed solutions that fit your needs and comprehensive alternatives that address your overall well-being. Our memberships offer a powerful combination of services. You can alleviate the burden of high unexpected medical bills with medical cost sharing. Forget the stress of navigating healthcare alone. Our concierge team becomes your personal advocate. They're with you every step of the way. They help find the highest quality providers and facilities, all at the fairest price. They'll even help track down the most affordable medications. Our memberships are a modern approach to healthcare. Talk to a healthcare advisor to learn more.
Welcome. It is Thursday time for the Freedom Hub Working Group. And if you are new to the channel, a couple of quick housekeeping things, a few other blurbs, and then we'll get into the topic today. We are in the process. We switched over to Substack. We still have a website, though, where you can find our speakers, some of the products and things, our affiliates that we work with, which I will show you real quickly. Actually, I'll show you, but I lost it. There it is. And it is yourfreedomhub.com. There you go. Your Freedom Hub, everything, we're kind of libertarian, looking towards freedom. We don't like the other stuff. And we've got some good things here, some good tabs. Go to your marketplace. If you would like to see your health pick up, or you're looking for solutions, for example, to get away from the Obamacare terrible traditional insurance that's out there. Charlie, in fact, sells medical cost sharing, which for many people is amazing. Out of network, you have options. You're paying less. I recommend check it out. DNA personalized supplements. We've got Cardio Miracle, and some more things down, some more below. Actually, the first test to see if there's plastic in your body and how to get rid of that. So check that out. Your Pavilion Solution, kind of our project on putting all of this into a kind of the next generation of lifetime fitness on steroids, which would be around the country, and you could go get better healthcare, better everything, and cool classes. So you can check that out under Your Pavilion Solution. And then on the Media Hub, your Media Hub page is our two shows, and you'll see our Wednesday show, Health, Biz, and Politics, Thursday, Freedom Hub show, who we have this month coming up, and below that, our most viewed shows, and then our channels. So our main channel is really Rumble, but everything's up on BitChute, Brighteon, and Tubi. Not so much YouTube. Like many others, they've censored much of our stuff, so we're staying away from them. So let me stop that share. I got a short piece I wanted to show, because we've had a few people on lately talking about sound therapy, sound healing, frequency, vibration. And there is, I saw a really cool video the other day. something it actually surprised me. So it's just like 2 minutes. I want to, less than that. I will throw it up on the screen, share sound.
In Cambodia called pre-Khan. But what I learned completely flipped my perspective. It turns out this wasn't really a temple. It was a hospital, but not the kind we know of today. There were no needles, no doctors in white coats. This was a place where they healed people with frequency, vibration, sacred water, and sound. The deeper I walked, the more I felt it. The energy, the stillness, the design. Every stone in this place seemed tuned to the human body. They believed that illness didn't start in the body. It started in the spirit, in the mind. And that healing had to reach deeper than just the surface. There are chambers here that echo when you chant. I tapped my chest, and the whole room resonated through my spine. Locals still come here today to rebalance their energy. This place isn't ruins. It's a living frequency machine built over 800 years ago. We've forgotten how to heal like this.
Yep, we have forgotten how to heal like that, but we are bringing people back in and using these types of frequencies and light, and we're seeing how effective it is. It's a shame that 800 years ago, thousands of years ago, we had this technology and it disappeared. I'll let you think about the reasons why, but that's for another day. Let me turn it over to Charlie now to introduce our topic today and our guest.
Thanks, Jim. And for folks who wonder why we're doing a frequency uh, blurb before a geoengineering presentation, is because for 7 years weekly, we've combined innovative healing with controversial truth exposure because we think it's all part of the same human path. So thanks for your forbearance. And you saw the promo for today. We are once again touching on the geoengineering topic. And what brought Raphaelle to today's show is that there's division in the geoengineering space between experts like Jim Lee, who's been on the show a couple times, and Rynette Senham, who's been on once or twice as well, between the exhaust of commercial jet traffic and a more nefarious aspect of the sky pollution and how it might interact in a synergistic bad way with radio frequency microwave radiation weaponry. Now, over at my lobbying client, National Health Federation, we have covered this combo of aviation pollution with the wireless radiation and how deadly it can be and perhaps might make a premeditated attack on humanity, that is depopulation. But the good news is overall we have an EPA administrator who has admitted that this stuff is happening, that it's no longer just a conspiracy theory. And he may not go as far as we want to, but a lot of us see the glass as half full. So we're glad to have some admission of fact from the administrator over at EPA. Those of us in the know do know that Biden had lots of taxpayer money going to lots of agencies for stratospheric aerosol injections to stem climate change, even though we make fun of the scam of climate change on this show. And further back, under Trump 1, there was a report called the Federal Weather Enterprise that Jolie Diane talked about that did decrease attention on jet pollution. So during the recent natural disasters, a lot of us saw the short clips on YouTube of Doppler radar activity around disasters in Maui, Malibu, North Carolina, etc. So when someone like Raphaelle O'Neill, a Guerilla reporter, and weather modification experts can give us some more expertise on this, we want to know. And at the end, I'll certainly show the campaign that you can send to your politicians to support political mitigation of this atmospheric pollution. And on X, you've seen efforts to pressure Trump to stop this mess. And there even is a bill that got a co-sponsor from Massey to take a look at this as well. So there is ongoing action. And with that, Raphaelle, tell us what's really going on and why the spraying is like bugs.
Yes, so it's not actually unrelated. The clip you started off with, with energy and frequency healing, because as Nikola Tesla says, we are all energy, frequency, and vibration. The whole universe is. Even when you go to the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and so the aerosol component, the spray like bugs part, that is a very nuanced and weaponized. Hiding the science in plain sight, but with linguistic games, because you can't undo science. You can just obfuscate and maybe hyper focus on another aspect of science to omit the rest of the elephant in the room. And so, first of all, just a quick little thing for your viewers. I'm going to share my screen here, if I may. Um, that just goes to share screen. So let me know if there's any issues, but I will. Okay. So most people think, CO2 is the most prominent greenhouse gas on Earth, but we need to fix this myth right off the bat. That's the first thing I do is educate people on no, it is water vapor. And if you think it's CO2, that's because you've been led to believe that that is the most significant greenhouse gas there is. This is the most prominent greenhouse gas on Earth. CO2 is in here, and man-made CO2 is a sliver of the pie chart. And so they obfuscate that in a number of different ways by Trump trumping up CO2, sorry for the term, and just focusing on that. And if we're going to reclaim the faulty sustainability narrative, we must first correct the science, because you don't have to believe me. You can actually quote NASA on this in their document, The Importance of Understanding Clouds. Even small changes in the abundance or location of clouds could change the climate more than the anticipated changes caused by greenhouse gases, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. And that's NASA, again, in their document, The Importance of Understanding Clouds. So how are they getting away with this? Well, they're saying, well, there's nothing man does that affects water vapor, except in increasing CO2, then it'll increase the heat and therefore the evaporation from the oceans. And so it's a secondary effect. It's not, and they just dismiss it so arrogantly, so intellectually dishonestly. It's an insult actually to intelligence and to science itself. So we know all sorts of things about contrails. Here, we know that airplane contrails is worse than CO2. Okay, it's going to make me do this. We know that clouds trap heat. We have articles here, clouds like blankets are melting the ice in the Greenland and just all over. The truth about CO2, here, I don't know which, this is a new, here, photos here. How about that? The truth is about CO2 and water vapor. It's like water vapor is so obfuscated that now that it's starting to reach consciousness, they have decided to acknowledge like contrails are an issue, but they call it the non-CO2 effect because they want our brain to stick to CO2. They do not want us thinking about water vapor. And we know that aviation is a major pollution source. On a good day, it's bad. Okay, it's not good for the environment. We know that. We know that actually, contrails are, we may or may not know, but they have a dehydrating effect. That's not good, especially, you want to talk about climate change. We know that there is meteorological effects to direct radiative forcing and climate effects, anthropogenic aerosols with different mixing states over China. Um, Airplane contrails may be creating maybe creating accidental geoengineering. Now, geoengineering is not geoengineering if it's accidental. There's the linguistic game we're dealing with, right? The fact is that the contrails are not just forming on pixie dust. They are chemicals. They are man-made chemicals, and they're water vapor, which is the most significant greenhouse climate driver we have. But we ignore the man-made causes of it. We say there's nothing man does that affects it. We say, but then we see a contrail and we say, oh, that's just water vapor. Well, if it's just water vapor, but it's coming out of a plane, it's significant, isn't it? Because you said there was nothing man does that really affects it, and that's why we're ignoring it to begin with. And look, all contrails are chemtrails at the source, right? Because it's not pixie dust it's forming on, right? And then also, they're all deliberate because they've got aircraft vapor trail control systems. The military, when they go on missions, they can suppress their contrail if they need to be stealth, but they're not doing it here. I mean, this is um, we know that they're playing games with us and insulting our intelligence. These planes are practically, they're in tandem at the same altitude. It's not like, oh, there's more humidity here and less up here. These planes are flying very close together. We know that we're being played like a mistress who is being cheated on. And then the thing about this is that they've wanted to weaponize the contrails for a long time. So here's the discussion of okay, the phenomena of vapor trails behind aircraft is a good example of triggering. This is like a 1945 paper. If the atmosphere is in the right condition, these trails grow considerably. Most striking is the report of a German meteorologist who observed and photographed the trails from only 3 airplanes over Salzburg develop into an overcast in the space of less than an hour. Now, so this has happened, but it was striking when it would happen. The rare meteorological conditions can create a persistent contrail. But again, contrail is not a natural phenomena. There's fuel, and what is that fuel? But I digress here. In a discussion of the energy for weather control, one cannot avoid reference to the possible utilization of atomic power, but adequate knowledge of the absorption and reflection of different types of surfaces will permit utilization of that other great source of power, the sun. All right. So as soon as they notice this phenomena, they're thinking about how to manipulate this to increase or access the albedo modification. And this is something you've probably spoken about in your research, albedo modification. This is one of the things that they want to do geoengineering because it can reflect the sun. It's the reflective property of surfaces on the Earth. So when in reference to clouds or contrails, they have albedo modification properties. Well, here's the thing. The thing is that, and I was a chemtrail activist for years before I found out that what is the underlying factor that will determine whether a contrail will persist or not? And it's funny, this term was not put out to me until I started measuring the atmospheric conditions and saying, oh, according to the Appleman chart that the military had back in the 50s and maybe up to the 60s, the atmospheric conditions should not yield a persistent contrail. And here we have one. And that's when all the trolls, the bots, the people following you on Facebook to keep your consciousness right in place. The gatekeepers came out and said, "Oh, but the ISSRs were at 90%, so we know that we would have had a ISSRs." Well, the NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, doesn't have that term listed in their meteorological glossary of terminology, of meteorological terminology. But I looked it up and it says a good marker of ISSRs is persistent condensation trails, contrails, when the sky is otherwise free of clouds. Since the mixing process in an aircraft exhaust plume can create very high degrees of supersaturation even in dry ambient air, the formation of contrails does not require as high ambient humidity as the formation of natural cirrus. Contrails can therefore decorate the sky when no cirrus clouds are around. Contrail persistence, however, requires at least ice saturation. So this is where some of this is lying to begin with. Um, it's in the ISSRs. They can be artificial. They're not natural anymore. So they're not natural contrails. It's not just natural. It is a byproduct of the mixing process in the engine exhaust. Now, what all is in the engine exhaust? Now, commercial planes, we might think we know what's in the fuel. They say they know, oh, it's kind of dirty, but do we really know what maybe these military planes are going around? And then we have all the smart dust, which can actually double as chafe. It's like the bridge between geoengineering and chafe. Chafe is like this clunky thing that they've been using to amplify or manipulate radar returns since the end of World War II. And but it's little bits of metal. It's kind of clunky, and we think, oh well, we would know if that's what it was, but no. Smart dust bridges the gap between geoengineering and chafe, and has a broader application, broader use. And so that's some of the science here right now. But when we're dealing with water vapor and anthropogenic, man-made water vapor, what affects water vapor? Okay, so let's break it down. We have, well, the sun, but we can break it down essentially to aerosols, nanoparticulates, which is the contrail territory. This is what contrail, but this is a weather weapon system. And so there's another part we must address, and that is the microwave radiation, which, you get radiation from the sun, you get radiation from HARP, you get radiation from the Doppler radars. And now a lot of people, it finally went viral this year. I've been trying to get this to go viral since 2017 when I noticed Hurricane Irma going into Doppler radar by the eye. And this was after I interviewed Weather War 101, who talks about the power plants. And they also are significant local sources of heat, of water vapor and heat. And actually, I just learned recently from a friend that know someone who works there, that they actually use chemicals to increase the opacity of the clouds that come out of power plants. So I encourage everybody to go see my Weather War 101 interview, but also any of his work, years of work. And ironically, he fell off the radar after our interview, shortly after, when I had made my discovery about Doppler radar, before he got to comment on it. They're very, I believe there's layers of gatekeeping, because if you stole the weather, wouldn't you make sure that nobody figured it out? This work, and I'll get into this, what this work is for, but when I started researching, oh my God, when did this start? Took me back to Nikola Tesla. This is basically not new stuff. This is the completion of 100 years of, and more, of Tesla's vision for the world. And this extends out to the 5G, 6G, 7G, uh, transhumanist agenda, all things connected, our Internet of Everything. It's all connected. And ultimately, I mean, we are energy frequency machines, and we are all powerful. We have the solution to everything. So before we dive into deeper, I would like people to anchor themselves in that knowledge and in that power. And that's why they work so hard to keep us from that. But the Doppler radars are all over the country. Where one lapses, there's another one, and there's more at these at the airports, and there's ones we don't know that are mobile, and they have them at sea. And speaking at sea, there's advances in sonar, does, like, there's patents on coupling, electromagnetic coupling with submarine radars, and you can couple it with HARP. So this I mean, I can't prove what they do at sea. I could see where the technology is at, and I've got a series I'm going to be releasing on Substack soon as I have a few missing pieces. But this is what the Doppler radar is, right? This is the ripples we see in the sky. It's not the only thing making ripples because there's other electromagnetic devices, but this is a main one. And for years, this was the Achilles heel, especially when they're bringing these storms in. Here's a satellite view. Sorry, I got to expand these each time. This the radar is right in the center, and you could see the concentric rings that go around it. This is a certain station, a certain date. Somebody was good enough to capture that. Um, it's very interesting studying radar. You can see, a lot of things. So this the contrails with the frequencies. We know that, but the problem is there's no liability in seeing electrochemically induced gravity waves in the sky. That plane, they don't mind you going chasing that plane. Um, you'll never catch that darn bugger, unless you get more laws and more cooperation with agencies like uh, EPA, FAA. We're not going to go anywhere until something more happens there. But where there is liability is where I got interested after 2017 when I saw Hurricane Irma going directly into the radar at landfall by the eye. And that was again after my Weather War 101 interview, and I was like, a light bulb went off, and I'm like, aha, that's how they're steering these storms. And I'm like, surely I'm crazy. Please let me be crazy. So I started tracking these storms. And I mean, here you have Hurricane Florence sitting exactly on top of, somebody picked it up, but I've got years of capturing that. And so at this point, let's be done with the slideshow for now anyway. And let me take you to my this was sorry. Uh the first Hurricane Irma. So it was talking about how they had interference. He couldn't see because the hurricane was going into it was interfering with it. And I'm like, look at this, look at the energy. It's going right into it. And so then I followed it going into the other one, the next one and the next one. And this is it's kind of a negative space beam, but the eye goes into it. Now, I had a World of Hot Water documentary series I rolled out, capturing all this and the narrative, um, and the storms that this is the radar in the middle with a black dot. Here's it being pulled off into the next radar. I'll show you a clear example here because I'm not really pausing with this. Let me get you into like Milton. It was easy for Milton. Okay, let me just refresh this. Looks like we're on someone else's. Okay, so all right, let me move this out of the way. Am I press and play? Oh, press and play is over there. Here is
Us are gonna hack next. They're already doing.
all right. It's me screaming at the screen because it's just it's been years of like I can't believe like they're just and I've got years of this years. So you can see the storm making landfall into the radar, and so I've got I mean, you see the storm making landfall by the eye. It's the eye we're talking about, making landfall into the radar. And I've got years. They did Helene like this. They steered it around. They've everyone. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and I've got them written down in a paper I haven't published yet. Where it's just a matter of historical data. Like you can't hide it. You just have to look at it. Here's the last tropical storm. It wasn't a hurricane. this year that happened. It was a tropical storm, but it too went right into the radar. So it's there's a negative space beam. Let's see if I could show you here, if you could pick it up. It's going in this direction, and the storm is feeding up that line. So then let's just do a couple more. This is just all the hurricanes last year, except the one named Raphaelle that came to New Orleans. Ironically, the one by my name didn't came to us, but then stayed out at sea, and it moved really weird. But that was a different thing here. So let me see. Let me move us to. Okay, so that's the. Now we triangulated further beyond this. This is not just for people saying, well, there's a lot of radars. That was the best explanation I got from NOAA when I went there to ask him about it at the American Meteorological Society conference. Oh, there's a lot. So people might think that. It's like, well, there's a lot of pockets on a pool table, and you can have a break shot. Sorry, this is it? Come on, let's accelerate here. Sorry, I track and I talk during these. Just because you break your balls on a pool game doesn't mean they're all going to end up going into a pocket at the break shot. Yet this is what we're seeing, which is a statistical impossibility. So here, let's see. Here, it's cut. Is that it? Now let me go a little further. Sorry, I don't have these lined up. Oh, there. Here it comes. Is that coming? There's the storm going in to the radar. Here, maybe this will be better view. There we go. Boom. Now, you could see that, right? You could see that it's going right into the radar by the eye. And so that would be interesting enough. I mean, I've got what? I got years. I mean, I could bore you with it. Idalia, straight, come on, Idalia, show me your stuff. So I started looking at the radar beyond that, trying to see if I could crack the code. And come on, come on. Okay. Here it goes. There it goes. And it's so like, it's just so predictable. I've captured the hurricane in Los Angeles doing that. Just passing it off, boom, by the eye, boom. They've sat on the so you seed the area, and now they got drones, so you don't even have to see the planes that they're doing the seeding, but they seed it. They direct the flights. They have the military flights do the special sauce. They can have chemicals that mix with the airplane with the regular commercial airplane contrails and do another thing, in the sky. It can, I mean, the fact is, it's not just contrails. Then you have steering, you have HARP that does the ionosphere, but these are tropospheric heaters, right? And so a little bit of explaining how, well, then I got barrel. I mean, I can go on and on showing you. This is barreling down. Here's some more. It's going to go into it. It's just like it gets boring after a while. You're like, no, okay, that's not, they're not going to do it again, are they? They're like, no, they are. They are, up until this year where they've used the technology to keep the storms off of us. They just drowned Jamaica, but they so we actually ended up looking at the storms in different modes. Like let me go into the Doppler compilation, and okay, this was here's a storm. Come on. It's just going to stay on. Okay, was that just twirling around the radar? Just twirling around the radar. I mean, these things have rotational vortexes. So there's a few things. Like you see how there's the dot in the middle is the radar, and go back. This is in storm relative mean velocity mode. Now this shows the polarities. Now the red and the green will align with the red and the green of the storm, and the white that separates the middle is what draws in. It draws it in along the mid polarity that aligned with the polarities of this. Right? It aligns with the polarities and it pulls it up. This is the eye right here going into the radar. Now you have two rings, two concentric rings around the radar. You have the smaller one. This was Florence. Okay, so the first actual landfall over Doppler number 2. The second ring is the outer ring. So the first ring, if let me show you when there's a blue. Well, this is, it's going to come right in, right over, right over, right over, right over. I mean, right over, right? And so let me pause this. There's a blue on the screen, and I can take you here to the radar. Let's just go to my area. I'm in the greater Louisiana. Okay, so this blue right here, let's animate this. Sorry. Okay, this blue, this radiation is in the smaller area right now. So when it goes and fills up both areas, you won't have clouds coming in here. If you do, they're going to break up. They'll break up, or they'll go around it, or they'll go over it, or they'll turn into popcorn clouds because it's heating it up. It basically, essentially, it's that's what it does. And when it shrinks, when the blue shrinks to close inside that first circle, and I pity the people that live next to it because they're always in the radiation zone. They, we have somebody on here who can testify to that. Then it allows the clouds. Then you have low pressure systems. All right, so there's basically two modes. And this is, I just got this from ChatGPT that totally agrees with me on this, but science wise, you got clean air mode, which is the low pressure, right? It when it's, so it creates localized heating or uplift, low pressure zone. Low pressure is where the clouds can come in. There's the pressure is like low to the ground from the clouds. When it's out to the second circle, that's a high pressure. That's high energization. So they energize it. Now there's more. Now that whole circle can spin like a record, counterclockwise, like you had the Texas flood where the rain just kept on those poor little girls and everybody in that area. The 4th of July gift, F you America, they were saying. That's what they were doing. Besides, Dorico, Rainmaker owner, kind of sounds like Dorico. Isn't that funny? Dorico actually was blamed for the Dorico, but it wasn't just him. Like, I was cloud seeding just a little upwind, just a little downwind, but I wasn't cloud seeding that area. Well, there's more than that. There's cloud seeding all along the Gulf Coast that was going on. Then you've got power plants popping off their water vapor. And then now you have now you have your radar that's going to steer it into place or keep it going. All right. And you might have had a drought before that because the radars were blooming for a long time. And so now the ground can't hold any saturation, right? It's easily overwhelmed because it's not,
Hey, Raphael,
yeah.
maybe you want to like close this up and we can ask you do a little Q&A.
Sure. Yeah. So there's also when the blue does go around, is fully energized and they shrink it, there's wind that comes from the north, the south, and the east, wind waves that triangulate over the radar because they've created a vacuum as the uplift happens, and that energy is released. So there's a lot to this, but for me, just pointing to the sky forever and not getting the triangulation that's in our backyard, which ironically, there hasn't been any hurricane since people started talking about radar. my work has been obfuscated because of the triangulation, the hurricanes. Dane likes to say, Dane Wigington of Geoengineering Watch likes to say, oh, it pushes out, it creates high pressure. But that's not all it does. It actually brings it in. And there you have proof of weaponization, not just it's global warming and we're doing this for the good of humanity. Because you explained to me as a survivor of Hurricane Katrina, and it went into 5 Doppler radars in a row. The statistical impossibility, the odds are impossible. This work, focusing on this and understanding how the radar does affect the weather like that, and especially the triangulation, can be taken to court. And so there's no violence here. People who talk violence are stupid because they're shooting themselves in the foot. Um, Take this to where things change. Take it to the courts, the law, the courts, and correct the climate science back to water vapor. And yes, there are man-made effects to water vapor, microwaves and aerosols. And so those contrails matter, and they should be fully scrutinized by the public. And there should be full transparency in everything that's going on. Although there's also a national um, security issue around the contrails because of the radar stuff. So I think it's hiding in the linguistics under national security and under radar, um, where it is admitted in the documentation. So the language needs to be broader, not just weather modification, because they're not, weather modification is secondary to them, and they're not admitting the other aspects such as we have shown today. I'm open for questions. I yield my time.
You want to stop that share?
Sure, yeah.
We can see you. So, yeah, let me start the radar. I mean, and you're not, I mean, we hear about this Doppler radar and these radar systems. Are these airport radars? Are these military facilities? Or is it a combination? Who's running them?
Yeah.
That's my
So
first question.
sure, sure. So there are airport radars. These are not usually airport radars we're talking about. They have airport radar, but these Doppler radars a lot of times can be on military bases, like Eglin Air Force Base has one. They're run by joint aspects of the military. Who for next red Doppler radar, you got National Weather Service, Department of Defense, Federal Aviation Administration. There's scan strategies, VCPs.
Okay, so there must be, have you found proof, like patents or something, that these systems, these electronic radar systems, do move condensation or affect airflow, something so that it can actually correlate to when you turn this
Sure.
on, this is going to happen?
Well, they do have a thing where they say, where is it? Where is it? Do they say don't point the beams in one direction? Oh yeah, beams should not be pointed in a fixed direction for extended periods of time, periods due to potential environmental or electromagnetic effects. That was the literature of Doppler itself. It's supposed to be seconds, but we're seeing alignments for hours before the storm comes in. And I
But
don't know if it's the
nobody's,
same.
has anybody done, well, I mean, any declassified studies on this or information or?
Well, we have, I mean, we have patents. Like I can share screen on some of that or just read it. But you don't have to change, like heat the whole atmosphere. Okay, so this is a point
Sure.
that needs to, um, you know, on land you got the radars nudging weather by EM heating and field shaping. All right, at sea submarines could do the same thing by working the storm at its fuel source. But again, I can't prove anything that's out in space or anything that's out at sea. That's why I focus like a rabid dog on what's at land. It Sorry, I have
That's
the
okay. Let me
my
run
notes,
to,
but you just need to affect small parameters, small parts, edges of a front or of a system to create a difference and to create a flow boundary, to encourage a pathway. And so if you're energizing something, and you can see it. I mean, I've got it in my, if you watch my Clear Skies presentation, there's points where I could just do radar analysis any day. You see a cloud coming in, and then you see the radar bloom, and then the cloud will go around it, even in a circle sometimes, around it. You
Right.
saw, I pulled up an image earlier where you could see the concentric rings around it. You have triangulation. What you don't have is anybody with an attention span long enough to bring it to court, and
Or the
yet,
money
because
is,
it's
yeah.
been so obfuscated through layers of propaganda and redirecting of climate science that we see where that's taking us.
So let me try to get the picture straight. So those of us that know that they're spraying some crap up there still struggle to define what's happening. And the disagreement among experts isn't helping because not everyone is clearly explaining what's going on. So, from what I think I heard from you today, there's natural disaster hurricanes being manipulated or exacerbated by radar, either being drawn in or pushing away. I guess people disagree. Then what I'm more concerned about, not being in an area with lots of natural disasters, is just the long trails that I didn't see growing up. I want that to stop. So what you're saying is that it's a combination of bad exhaust from commercial traffic, potentially exacerbated by secretive or military fleets that disperse chemicals that make the commercial exhaust persist. And is there some radar influence with that dynamic that's filling my skies with the tic-tac-toe lines, vertical and horizontal, and that disperse into clouds?
I think that the aerosols assist with the radar, and the radar is the weather. It's who's going to get the rain, where it's going. That's a daily. That's within our deep government's interest at this point to manipulate that every day, every which way, not just to hurricanes, because they're doing it every day. They can send the rain where they want it. They can, they may not have it perfected, but, and I think AI at this point is probably doing a lot of those calculations for them. There might be secondary side effects they don't intend. I don't know. I can't speak for things that I don't know, but what I do know is that the radars are affecting the weather every day. It is being done in a deliberate way. I also met the Army captain that was ordered to bring as many body bags to New Orleans 11 days before Katrina made landfall. And he brought 5,226 body bags 8 days before Katrina made landfall. And I didn't know 3 days before Katrina made landfall. This is when I found out there was a hurricane, but the military knew. So I also called out a hurricane before the meteorologist did, because I knew a person in the military that told me he was told to pack his bag. And I knew that, now I'm not going to remember the name of that, the one that right before Irma in 2017 that hit Texas. I'm going to draw a blank on that, but um, the water vapor came from the power plants that they couldn't explain all that extra. Then it's like they come up on schedule, and I don't know how they do this. Like I don't have all the patents are there, and obviously the effects are there, and we can see it, and they're in conjunction together with the weather event that's taking place, and then the steering. So, but that steering I've also seen daily, daily. This it is affecting. Like I've seen droughts, and like the saltwater invasion that took place a couple years ago in the summertime. It was such a drought that because they were pushing away the hurricanes that at that point, that the salt water was coming in, and then they had to use a straight line beam that came across a few states from something off at sea. You could see the weather forming along a straight line up to, all the way to Louisiana from the Atlantic to end the drought, to fill the Mississippi so they wouldn't have to turn off the pumps and have salt water in the pumps in New Orleans. Um, so this is these are boys with toys. And I don't know why they do everything they do when they do everything they do, but they do it, and I can see it, and I've triangulated on it. The clouds and the I don't really know what's in a commercial I mean, I'm not the one testing jet fuel for commercial airlines. Maybe they're telling the people that it's just regular jet fuel and it's not. I don't know. I'm not the one in charge of monitoring that. I can only assume that, if it is what they say it is, it's still not good. And it doesn't mean that we know what is being dispersed from the flights, the many flights that we don't see that is affecting that. But as you could see from the literature, that the exhaust plume of a contrail of a plane can create a dry ambient um, artificial eye supersaturated regions, and that's not being discussed in the science publicly with a layperson. So that's relevant. That needs to enter into the language and into the consciousness instead of the CO2, CO2, CO2. And let me tell you what else, these data centers, highly polluting, they're popping up everywhere, and they create major amounts of water vapor. A lot of them they release into the atmosphere, or they dirty the environment. But that is a source of climate pollution, especially when you have steering capabilities with. So um, it's concerning that we've gone this far as a species with a wrong climate narrative, allowing absolutely dangerous technologies to prop up in our midst in our backyards. And my thing is, I hate to say, I hope they send another hurricane here. um that's where we get the tiger by the tail, is when they do. And there's other examples. I'm happy to work with anyone to share what I've seen. I do put it in my work. There's more nuance that can be had, and I will be putting up a detailed article on the different aspects of this, because it is a weather weapon system, and we need to understand it so that we can get a grip on the language and the laws that we need to change to stop this.
How
If I
can
could follow
people,
up, Jim, please. So what about what has been done legislatively in a couple states banning geoengineering, with 20 or odd more states with bills pending to do the same, versus Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill federally? Have you gotten into the weeds of those state versus federal bill solutions, and what do you think of them?
I actively tried to participate here in Louisiana. um I don't want to poo-poo efforts, but the for me, it's if you don't address the other aspect. I know you got to do what you got to do, but here's the trick about it. If you just ban weather modification, right? And let's say they create a drought now with the Doppler radar, like they can and do. Um, Now people are going to be begging for weather modification, cloud seeding, because there's benign uses of it, like where you're like, hey, we're going to do this because we need rain here. Okay, and everybody would agree to it. But so it would actually could have the opposite effect of making people beg for it if you don't address all of the whole spectrum that is at play. I know that they use the language. One bill didn't make it here in Louisiana, and another one did, and the one that did basically stopped weather modification, but they haven't admitted to doing any weather modification in Louisiana because we're abundant in water. And so nobody's filed for any of the applications for weather modification in years. Um, and there's somebody on this Zoom that could probably talk more to it than me and get in the weeds of the law here. But the problem is, if they just don't call it weather modification, it doesn't matter. And if it's a matter of national security because you haven't addressed the climate change science, it's not CO2, it's water vapor. You're already got a false sustainability narrative. Then you're dealing with one part of a monster that's like the makeshift tail, that's not really the head and the heart of it. um it's a beast that must be understood in its totality. I appreciate the efforts, because as the efforts move forward, there's human consciousness and more people come to the table, and it's normalized to have these conversations. Because when I started in 2010, nobody wanted to talk about chemtrails, the conspiracy theory in the sky. Now you call it contrails and jet cirrus with albedo modification and weather modification capabilities. Now you're not thrown out of the room. So but they're all contrails or chemtrails, because they're not forming on pixie dust. So the laws are kind of, they're nice effort for me. Until, I'm waiting for humanity to see maybe other people can do well with that. You come to me when you want the tiger by the tail, and I'll show you the Doppler radar, especially when these storms come in. But I'll show you how to do it yourself, and you'll be able to see if it's going to rain or not based on what your radar is doing. Now it's real time; it changes in real time. So, but you could see the intention of the weather makers by looking at your radar. Um, it's too much. It's not. I'm past the point of thinking it could be. I mean, I did ask myself, maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it's inadvertent. They don't mean to do it, but it has this effect. And it's just not statistically possible. And I've seen too much and too many years of it. And not just the hurricanes, but other places, knowing how the radar works. So I just encourage people to learn about that and to start working that into the narrative. First of all, correct CO2 back to water vapor, and then say, why are we ignoring water vapor? There's anthropogenic sort, and look, and microwaves emit, they heat the atmosphere a little bit. So we're talking about global warming. Do we really want to heat the atmosphere a little bit if we're willing to like reduce population to stop heating the atmosphere a little bit? It's just correcting the science so that it makes sense again.
Okay. Hey, before we end, I want to ask you, take a quick look at this picture, would you? I just shot this outside of Washington, D.C. a little while back. And I said, I looked in the sky. I said, wow, this is weird. I had to stop the car, open the window, and take the shot. This looks like it fits
Absolutely.
in somewhere in your bailiwick. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so they call it gravity waves, right? But a lot of these will be like standing gravity waves, and gravity waves, like what they're defining gravity waves, should move with the wind. The Dopplers can do that, but there's also other technologies. Christy might be able to tell you about the gentleman who's a meteorologist who's exposing some of these technologies as well. I would love to talk to him too, just to share what I know, um, as far as that triangulating aspect. But the meteorologist has even, there's like more technologies I was learning about watching his show. I can't remember his name right now, but it's in my playlist somewhere. I do the best I can having two children, and
Yeah.
having been at this for over a decade,
So
um,
where can people find you, reach you, websites,
okay.
papers?
So I go by the handle Nola Butterfly, and that's because I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana. I started out just as a person who cared about climate change. I was on the Al Gore bandwagon at first, um, not anymore.
Weren't we
And
all?
so yeah, rumble.com/user/Nola Butterfly, or on YouTube, because YouTube censors. I don't have my main presentation there, but I've got some other weather stuff if you're looking to really pick the brains of it. On Nola Butterfly 2 for YouTube. On X, I'm Nola Butterfly. My presence needs to be on there more. I'm just doing the best, but I am going to, on Substack, Nola Butterfly. I am going to be wheeling out, and I'll share this with you guys, like a 7 and 8 part that breaks down the climate science, and then the contrails, and then gets into the Doppler, and everything ChatGPT can pull together. And it acknowledges that it's very intellectually dishonest to focus on CO2 when it's clearly water vapor that has these major technologies that are just like, how can you ignore that? It's just, that's the part that all the gatekeepers don't want you to get. They don't, they really don't want you to put that together, asking, wait, the technologies, they are significant.
Scalar waves. Yeah.
Scalar waves,
Yeah.
yes. But we're
Okay.
scalar wave making machines too.
Yeah, of
So I know
course.
people have done experiments to clear the skies. So we really need to tap into that, our power all across the board, in the laws and in our own um, powers in our own body.
Thank
And
you.
how do folks reach you, or did she
We
kind of
got
cover
that.
that, Jim?
We got that. We covered it already.
Yeah.
Okay.
You missed
So
it. You zoned
it,
out.
no, no, it's okay. Well, how they can see my stuff. Comment on the last. Yeah, I don't. It's hard. You can message me on Nola Butterfly on X, and
Yes.
I'll get it sooner or later.